Hi everyone, my name is Dorian. We are hosting MedTech Trends. Today we have with us Sean Costella. So Sean was born in Carson City, Nevada, where he grew up playing baseball, and he actually excelled at it. We'll get into that. He went to college in Southern California. He went to Santa Barbara College, City College, and he received a scholarship to play at Concordia University, where he also finished a degree in psychology and went on to win a national championship in baseball. Props to you, Sean.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
He grew up in a pretty big family. He's one of six children, and while he was growing up, his mom was a blackjack dealer, and his father was also working as an iron worker. And then after college, he moved back to Carson City and ended up marrying his high school sweetheart. And they now have two beautiful daughters, Kira and Gina, if I pronounce their names right.
Yeah, Kiara and Gianna.
Kiara and Gianna. And when he's not parenting or working, you can usually find him at a range or at the golf club. So welcome, Sean. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. And I especially appreciate you coming on and being open and willing to share your story. It's not often that you get people that are really kind of open to talking about their personal experiences. But I think that shows a lot of courage and certainly a lot of will to help others. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about some of your experiences living and going through living with a rare disease. I also want to talk about how that's kind of changed your perspective on life, and also what you've been able to accomplish in your current work at your company. The first thing I wanted to ask you about is actually about your early career in baseball, because I'm a big fan of, and I don't know if the name is spelled Ed Milet.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's become like highly successful, but he also had and he's one of these like public speakers, and he does a lot of motivational speaking and leadership talks and that kind of thing. But he also had an early career in baseball, and he ended up actually going in a different direction, but became very successful. I'd love to hear about what your experience was doing that.
Yeah, shoot. I mean, baseball was very impactful in my life. It taught me, so much about being part of a team dynamic and how to work hard. I was never growing up. I was never the biggest or strongest kid. I was very small, skinny, and so I always had to work twice as hard as everybody else in order to achieve the level of success that I got to. Um, but it definitely was a staple for just my overall work ethic and drive, and it also has parlayed so much into my life of just getting into a professional career and being able to, I'm in pharmaceutical sales now, and just in a professional light of being able to just the work ethic and day to day applying yourself. And
Hmm.
so, but yeah, growing up was awesome. Played high school ball, went to Santa Barbara City. I was able to earn a scholarship to Concordia after that. Where we won a national championship in 2011. And yeah, it was an amazing time
That's
for
awesome,
sure.
man. Yeah, it's incredible. At what point did you decide to kind of transition in a different career path?
After I was done playing in 2011, I was going to try to go play pro over in Italy, and just kind of the connections of trying to get over there kind of all fell through. And shortly thereafter, there's some independent leagues I could have gone and played for, but I was relying a lot on my parents for the funds and able to live every day on a day, monthly costs and all that. So I had to get a job. Talked to my dad. So about a year after, I coached down at Concordia for a year. Then after, I was like, all right, I need to switch gears and find something else and get them more on a career driven path. And so that's what I did. And I ended up moving home. And yeah, I'm here today.
Yeah, and you started on this different kind of life path, but there's things. I think that things kind of happen for a reason, and so it sounds like everything kind of worked out pretty well in the end, and you're doing something where you're really able to impact a lot of people. So that's definitely a positive.
Yeah, it is everything. I'm definitely through this whole experience, what we're going to discuss, just everything in my life. I can definitely attest that everything has happened for a reason. So I know I'm
Hmm.
on the right path and I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Okay, good to hear. Good to hear, and I love that positive attitude too. If you haven't heard of Ed Milet, he's got a really cool story too. He's in the I think the insurance business now, but he's just a really cool guy to listen to. So and baseball was kind of like that was the path he wanted to get into. Major League Baseball too, but he ended up going through some great personal experiences, and that changed everything for him. But yeah, just in case you
Sure.
happen to come across him, just something to bring up, and you might want to check him out as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
So okay, so I wanted to talk about everything that's kind of happened in the last about 2.5 years. So I wonder if you can take me back to 2 years ago. What was it like when you first got diagnosed?
So it was about September of 2016. I started noticing, some symptoms that I had that were pretty alarming. My vision kind of just when I was driving outside sales, so you're in your car a lot. I noticed when I was driving, like I just felt like I was buzzed. Like I had a couple beers at the bar, and then I'm like driving home, and I'm like, man, what is going on? This is in the middle of the day. I just woke up. Remember, I woke up one day and was just went to work, and it was man, everything just felt really off, and I was just felt pretty buzzed. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm just groggy or in a head fog type deal. It's nothing really to worry about. And it lasted for a couple, I would say like 2 or 3 days before I was like, all right, this is starting to kind of, it's not, I'm not shaking it off. So I'm paying more attention to it. And then I noticed my fingertips, like my underneath my fingernails, they started feeling really tingly, kind of numbish. And I tried not to say anything. I was like, all right, I'll just shake it off. It's not going to be a big deal. And it was about a week and a half, 2 weeks before I told my wife. I was like, hey, my wife's a nurse, by the way. And I was like, hey, I'm having these symptoms. I've been trying to shake it off. It's not going away. And what do you think we should do? And she's like, well, let's just go get checked out. So I went in. We went into the ER. Of course, when you have those types of symptoms, you get to bypass the wait because they think you're probably having a stroke. And sure enough, I went in. They did a scan, and what they'd found is they told me, hey, we found a mass in your brainstem. Don't know really what it is. It's just off the scan, off the CT, and you need to have an MRI. And we're probably going to transfer you up to a larger hospital, which is in Reno, called Renown. So when I went through that experience, it was kind of they just found it and they referred me out to a neurosurgeon, and it wasn't really made that big of a deal from the first time. And at that time, it was only a 4 millimeter Cavernoma, is what it ended up being. And so they sent me to Renown. I got the MRI. They confirmed it was a Cavernoma that had bled, and so, but it was only 4 millimeter bleed at the time. And they referred me out to a neurosurgeon who I saw at a later date. And when I went and saw him, the experience was very I don't want to say a sour experience. It was just different. So when he came in, it was very much, I dealt a lot with his nurse practitioner or his physician assistant. They couldn't really give me much information about cavernomas because they didn't really know much. Just, they made it seem like it was not a big deal. And when the doctor actually came in the room, he was actually on his cell phone and just like, hey, this isn't anything really that big of a deal. And pretty much I got to go, but don't worry about it. You're going to be fine. And you can, if you want, we can refer your films out to wherever you want.
Okay.
And so it was kind of put off, or just like not that big of a deal because I don't think there's like too much awareness about the cavernomas. And that same day, my wife went into labor with our first daughter. So conveniently, it was all my symptoms, everything got put on the back burner. And that night, we're in the hospital and deliver our first daughter. And so, yeah, everything got put on the back burner for a few months. And I did remember though that they said based on the location, they kept saying if you were to, based on where this is located, you should have a lot of trouble swallowing, or like you feel nauseous at the same time.
Mhm.
And so, and since I didn't really have any of those symptoms, like I didn't feel nauseous and I didn't have trouble swallowing or anything. Uh, they were just basically saying, "Hey, it's no big deal. It's just there. It's something to watch."
Okay.
So
So
yeah, that was the very very beginning of finding out.
okay, you mentioned a couple interesting things. So I was reading up on this online, and maybe I'll just kind of describe some of the what the actual disease is. for anybody that's not too familiar with it. So you mentioned it was a cavernoma, and from what I understand, it's essentially just it's a bunch of um, blood vessels that kind of clump up and they form a little like a mini sort of they described it as like a little kind of blue like a berry sized lump, and it usually appears either in your brain or your spinal cord or your brain stem at the back of your head. And so what that ends up and you send me some pictures, and so what I can do, they're not graphic, so maybe I'll post one of them up to share with other people just for educational purposes. But
Sure.
one of the things that's unique about this thing is that it's not very well known what causes it. Oftentimes, and a lot of people actually will have it, but it'll go asymptomatic, so they won't even know that they're walking around in their normal lives with it. And it kind of sounds like you had a bit of that experience as well too, right? So from the time that you were diagnosed, a few months went by, and did anything happen in between?
No, so I just kind of carried on. My symptoms, they never really fully faded, but I just kind of stopped paying attention to them and didn't really think much of it. And then I remember it was Saturday, and my symptoms prior, like 2 days before, had been getting a little bit worse. I could tell the 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 buzzed became a little bit more prevalent, and I was, things were kind of just moving. My hands definitely were, my fingertips were a lot more numb, and then I started feeling nauseous. And I remember sitting there with my wife. It was a Saturday, and I didn't really want to go in, and she ended up getting on the phone with my parents, and had my dad came down and talked me into going in because I didn't want to go in. I don't really like to go get checked out all the time. It's a
Right.
little bit of a fear going on there. And yeah, so sure enough, I went in and they did another CT, and it showed that it went from a 4 millimeter bleed to a 10 millimeter bleed. And they down at the local hospital in Carson, they don't really have any neuro doctors down there, so they transferred me up to Reno. I was seen at Renown, and everything started to get very real at that point. This is a pretty serious situation. So, of course, they did another scan up at Renown, and the ER doctor was just like, "Look, I can't tell you if you're going to be okay. I don't. I just don't know, And he did a great job of just explaining like this is more serious, and we're going to put you in the ICU because it's where it's located. It's, I mean, your brain stem, so I mean, it's going to control everything that goes on with the rest of your body. And so they put me in the ICU, and they were on, I believe, the neurology team got looks at the films, and they came in and we kind of went over a course of action. It was funny because there was two difference of opinions, and the neurosurgeon that I did see prior to um, came in, looked at the film, said, "Oh yeah, it grew, but it's still nothing. There's nothing really we can do, and it's not to worry about it."
Did they ask you like what kind of symptoms and like how frequently you're feeling these things? Because I feel like that should have been an indicator of maybe, medically, based on what we know, this doesn't fit the criteria of a major concern, but like clearly this person is in pain or trouble or is not functioning well.
Yeah, so I've told them, and that's the problem, or not the problem, but it's very difficult for people to relate or to even explain yourself of how you're feeling because it's all internal. It's not like I had a stroke, like where my face, facial paralysis or anything like that. It was very much like this is the way I'm feeling, and I don't know what to do about it.
Mhm.
And so it's hard to relay that message and for them to really kind of grasp it. But obviously there's something there, and they're like, "Well, is it really?" Because the symptoms, like I had a little bit of nausea, but where that was located, if it was really an issue, they're saying you wouldn't be able to, like you'd be throwing up all the time, and that
Okay.
wasn't really prevalent. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so um, there's two different neurosurgeons looked at and had very difference of opinion, and both of them wouldn't touch it. And one was like, "You can go home," and then the other one came in and was like, you need to send your Phillips down to Stanford, and this is a very serious situation because you are about a millimeter away from being paralyzed, or you at the time you're uh, you're millimeters away from being paralyzed
Hmm.
from the neck down, or if it bleeds more, like you could die. So these are
Jeez.
really their only two options. And it's just, I know nothing serious has happened yet, but this is, you need to get down to Stanford. And so they shot my films down to Stanford, and they didn't want me to drive. They wouldn't let me drive. But this is where kind of learning about the whole, I guess, insurance side of things and the healthcare system and how it works was crazy, because it was on a Sunday, and at the time I was going through a job transition. So when I went in, I had 2 weeks before my start date. So I didn't think I had insurance. I wasn't aware of Cobra at the time.
Hmm.
So my wife tried to get me added onto her insurance. Then we had to claim Cobra, and but it's a Sunday and nobody can get you on, or and I so because they wanted to medevac me to Stanford. And so it was I was more just in the seat, and behind the scenes my brother and all my family were tackling all the obstacles of being able trying to get me transferred down to Stanford.
Jeez, man, that sounds
And
like a hell of a weekend.
oh yeah. And so um what ended up happening is, by that delay in which of getting me, because it took another day and a half before they could actually get me down to Stanford. And when I got to Stanford, they medevaced me down there. They obviously did another MRI, and I had bled a third time. So in that time frame, I went from a 10 millimeter to a 14 millimeter bleed. And that's when, like, a little bit, my wife and everybody tells me, because it's kind of all a little bit of a blur, but my speech was slowing down a little bit. And I just kind of, they could tell it was going in the wrong direction. And so at that point, it became, if you bled with one more millimeter, then you'd be paralyzed, or two more millimeters the other way, it'd be dead. And so Dr. Steinberg and his team immediately got me in, and I think my surgery, was 8.5 or 9 hours surgery,
Jeez.
um, and woke up, and it was a completely different world after that.
Like, did you know what you were getting into in terms of? So it seemed like this was an emergency case. Like you had to get surgery. You didn't really have a second option. But did you
Hmm.
know? Did you have all the information that you needed to know what you would really, what it's going to come
Yes,
out at the other end?
I just tried to not hear what the best, the most likely scenario coming out of the surgery would be. Um, I didn't do any research. I tried to tell my family I don't want to know anything. I just know, like, if this is what I have to have, like, happen, and I have to have this surgery, like, I want to go into with the best mental state of, like, I'm going to come out of this, I'm going to beat this, and come out, bring out I guess, my old competitive, mindset. Just like, this isn't going to hold me back.
Right.
And I think that helped. However, I mean, because it was a very, very serious surgery, but it all happened so fast that I didn't really digest all of that until later, months later, of just like, wow, what I went through, and like how bad things could have gone. Um, I mean, I was supposed to come out paralyzed on my pretty much my whole right side. Um, Maybe not even able to eat and swallow. Um, you know, very, very serious. Um, you know, post surgery, symptoms. And
Right.
um, I was very fortunate. My case went better than expected, and it's um, to this day. He said, Dr. Steinberg told me that, I wish every patient could recover like you, and it couldn't have gone any better. And
Hmm.
so I'm very blessed, and it's just really changed my perspective on a lot of things in life. But after surgery and waking up in that kind of state too is a whole different battle in itself.
Hmm. I've my mom, actually, I just wanted to kind of plug this in too, but my mom had a neurosurgery about 2 years ago, and she was also, like, it was for a different reason, actually, for like disc degeneration, but like, she was in a lot of pain constantly, and it took a
Sure.
long time for her to get to that point where it was like, it's an emergency, like this has to get done. And one of the reasons why I think she delayed it for a long time was a bit of misinformation, and also a bit of, she didn't she didn't want to think about what it was going to be like and what the possibility was going to be on the other end of it. Because anytime you get spinal surgery or brain surgery, there's a risk for things going very wrong. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that might, make a lot of people hesitate to get it, even when they really need it.
Sure. And I don't. for me, there was no other course of action. So it was like, okay, if this is the only way that because it's in there and it keeps bleeding
Mhm.
and symptoms are getting worse. And I knew that this was the only option. And if I didn't get it, things are going to get way worse or I could die. And so when you're faced with that decision, it's like, well, I'm not going to just sit here and die. I'm 28 years old at the time. And I got a
Mhm.
lot of life to live. So let's get this done.
Okay.
But the depth of a brain surgery for sure is, like I said, I didn't realize how how large and how major of a surgery that could be, and like how quickly things could have gone wrong.
Mhm. And it's even hard at that point to have like a frame of reference because, like you said, there were even the fact that there are doctors that have different opinions on what you should do. I mean, clearly this is not something that a lot of people really know a lot about. It is
Hmm.
considered a rare disease, and so it's very hard to study these things to even like write about them, and so that people can study them and know what to do in those cases. So yeah, I think even you talking about it, that this is going to go a long way. I think a lot of people will benefit from just hearing this type of thing because not a lot of people know about it to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, and I'd never heard of it, had no idea about it prior to, um, and it's a shocking experience. But I do like Dr. Steinberg and his team, and he specializes in cavernomas, and
Hmm.
he helped create the technology, the type of laser they use during the surgery. I mean, he is somebody that's very active in exploring that, and he knows, in my opinion, the most about them. And I was in the best hands that I could be in at that point.
I'm glad to hear it. Absolutely. And so I wanted to also ask you, what was because you said your wife is a nurse.
Yes,
What was her perspective on all of this as you're going through
she is very, very strong. I can tell you that.
it?
It was very scary for her because we have a 6 month old at the time, and with our first daughter Kiara, and she had the same. She was a track athlete growing up. She ran track at ASU, so she had the same very, sports mentality, and she was the same as me of not letting any other option other than this. Everything is going to be okay, and that's all it's going to be. Like we didn't think about. I know she was on the same page as me. Is I didn't want to hear like what the options, what could be, what you know. All we have one option, and it's where everything's going to come out normal, and we're going to be fine, and we're going to get through this. And she was extremely strong, and like I couldn't have had a better person by my side through the whole situation. She was my rock. She got me through everything, especially the recovery. And but from she also works in as a nurse. She also knows, she deals with surgery cases. She knows how major of a surgery that I was getting into. So it was a lot. It was scarier for her at that point, but she held it together. And you never would have known.
Hmm.
And but it was definitely, once we got through it, it brought us closer together. And yeah, it was a lot on her for sure.
I can only imagine. Yeah, I mean, it's there's an area that people are studying and talking more and more about. It's called caregiver burden, and that caregiver could be could be a nurse, it could be a partner, a spouse, or somebody that you kind of paying to come to your home and look after you, that kind of thing. But it's whatever you go through, it's not only a big thing for you as the patient, but at the same time it becomes a big deal for all the people around you that are trying to look after you, that care for you, that want to look after you, want to make sure you're getting better. It becomes a big deal for them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, along with, I mean, she's got the fears of, like I said, a 6 month old baby. Her husband might be stuck in a wheelchair. We're, we're just newly married within 2 years. So it, it was a lot for her to digest. And, but again, she kept the faith and held our family strong and held us together through that whole
Hmm. It's awesome to hear. And I wanted to ask you. So you woke up from the surgery, and take me through what that experience was like at that point.
time. That was not what I expected at all. I can tell you that right now. It was an extreme shock. I When I woke up, it was pitch black. I couldn't open my eyes, so I couldn't see, I couldn't talk, I couldn't swallow, I couldn't. Everything was just my eyes had really bad oscillopsia, so your eyes are just bouncing up and down extremely fast. I had double vision. I had really bad vertigo. Um, I couldn't feel anything. All my sensation was extremely, extremely off. Um, and all my other senses were extremely heightened. So like I remember I could hear everything, but it was so loud that like it put me in a state like of anxiety. I didn't know if I was okay. And so anytime my brother or my wife were talking and they didn't want, maybe they're just kind of whispering, I could hear them, and I wouldn't want them talking because it felt like anxiety, maybe like, oh, they're talking about me, because everything had been such a focal point on me. Like I thought everything was bad. Like they didn't want to tell me what kind of shape I was in. So my body, I just didn't. I was in complete shock and just like I don't. It was so much to handle. Plus, you're in a lot of pain. I mean, you know, just from the whole incision. I mean, it was a 9-hour surgery. So, um, yeah, I guess shocked, and then waking up in that state, it was just I couldn't believe just the uphill battle that I was going to encounter, because I knew that I couldn't see, I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything, but I could think and obviously know what was going on, and I just knew I was up for a large task.
Hmm. Were you in the hospital for a long time after that?
So I was in the hospital for about 5 days after the surgery. Immediately when the next morning they came in and started trying to do a little bit of occupational and physical therapy there, having me sit up, they wanted me to try to walk. Physical therapy was trying to have me walk. Couldn't walk with a walker. Everything was just so off. Um, and they wanted to get me up and moving. And it was about 5 days. They sent me home, and I had to drive 3 hours, which was extremely uncomfortable. I have vertigo. Everything is just on 1,000. And when I finally got home, I started my recovery, and I had occupational physical therapy the following week, and just started to get after it one day at a time. But it was definitely eye opening. I mean, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't change. I couldn't go to the bathroom on my own. I couldn't do. It's completely debilitating. So um, it's just very, very difficult. You know,
Hmm.
to have your mind's telling your body to do something, your body can't do it. Right? That's something that I don't think many people will ever experience, and if you do experience it, it's awful.
Right, right. Especially from from being an athlete and having that, control
Hmm.
over your body to just being very debilitated, and not really being able to even sense what's going on like fully. That's yeah, I can imagine what that must have been like. And you, like you said, you woke up and you couldn't open your eyes, you couldn't even see. That's a scary place to be.
Oh yeah, everything's just black. And anytime you try to open your eyes, it's like the world is just in like chaos. Literally, you can't control your eyes. So everything. I always use the analogy, or I'll show people what it's like if you just turn your camera on, right, on your cell phone to make a video, and you shake it as fast as you can up and down, and then you watch that video. That's what it was like. The vision, you just couldn't control it. And like if you're listening to this, I suggest you try that, because people are wake up and they're in that state every day. It's happening,
Mm.
and it's just so awful. Um, but through intense physical and occupational therapy, was able to calm down. A lot of it's due from the swelling and actually the surgery itself. I do still have residual effects from this surgery. I still have double vision. I still have a little bit of like constant, I would say, like oscillopsia. My eyes still kind of consistently move, so my drifts still move a little bit at all times. Um, but that's just those are better alternatives than being in a wheelchair to me. So
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it kind of sounds like it took a couple weeks to go through the recovery.
yeah, so my eyes, I was able to get my vision, I would say, back about after 5 weeks. So I sat for about a month with my eyes just closed,
Jeez.
and yeah, because anytime you open them, you couldn't keep it open for more than two, I guess 2 seconds, because it was just so intense coming in. And I was able to start walking after the first week, um, with a walker, and going through the. So, I mean, it's been the full. it took me about 2 months of solid where I felt like I was back on my feet and could move around pretty functionally. But I still had a lot of symptoms that were going on every day.
Hmm. And even to this day, you still, like you said, you still have symptoms. Is it periodic, or is it like you got to deal with this every day?
Nope, it's constant. So today I deal with, I still have double vision when I look to the right. I still have that oscillopsia a little bit. I still have that buzzed feeling. My hands, my fingertips, or my hands are still really like off sensation wise. My whole body is like pretty desensitized. I can feel like touch and stuff, but it's in like hot and cold, but it's nowhere near like the feeling of when someone else actually feels it.
Hmm.
Um, I still I get like really heavy arms at times. I'll be sitting there and my arms will feel like 1,000 pounds, like they're just super heavy. Um, Extreme tiredness sometimes and exhaustion. And yeah, I mean, there are symptoms that I deal with on a day to day basis, but again, it's very difficult because if you were to look at me, you would never even know. And that's funny when I go around in the work that I do now, going in and out of providers' offices, and they hear this, story, or they'll see the pictures of the scans. They'll look at me and they'll just be like, "How long ago was this?" I tell them, it was just 2 years. I just hit 2 years. They're just jaw drops.
Right.
And so I've had a very blessed and fortunate experience to be able to have minimal symptoms like I do have. It is very difficult to live with on a day to day basis, but at the same time, I know the alternative could have been so much worse. And so, yeah, just thank God every day.
And like, I mean, yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I mean, you definitely you look and you sound like you're like fully functioning, right, as if you made a complete recovery. But clearly, there's some things that are residual, and but at the same time, I think you seem like a very positive person, and I think that's probably half the battle is just maintaining this positive outlook because it helps with like coping and just getting through and moving on with your day to day because you've got others, you've got family, you've got work. You're helping people all day, every day, and there's other things right alongside that. You're still coping with all these different things. I think just the having a positive outlook on this, I think that goes a long, long way, and it's a really important thing to have.
Yeah, appreciate that. It's been a long journey for sure. It's definitely had its challenges, and I try to be as positive as I can on a day to day basis because I do know that you know just at that moment, life could have gone one of two ways, and just to kind of have another go around and be able to appreciate things more, it's very eye opening. And so,
Hmm.
I think positivity and focusing on just controlling what I can control, and a lot of it is I can control my mental state and I can control my attitude towards things, and so it starts with if you can be positive, it's going to make your life a lot easier. So, whatever you're doing that day, a lot easier. Um, and being negative and getting down is easy. And the psychological aspect after surgery. I mean, shoot, it was difficult. I felt sorry for myself at times. I was frustrated, asking why. Because the cover was extremely difficult and living with symptoms on a day-to-day basis. Anybody that is going through something like that or in pain every day, it's not fun, and it's extremely easy to get down and go down that negativity path, and that's a bad and the wrong place to be.
Hmm. You were saying that you're also one of the outcomes of this experience has been you're a lot more grateful now for all the things that you have. And you look at that as like these are all the amazing things that I can now enjoy. Whereas it could have turned out very differently, and I might not have been able to enjoy any of these things.
Yeah, I mean, just every day of just being able to wake up, like doing little tasks. Like once those, uh, I think I mentioned to you, just brushing your teeth or taking a shower, going to the bathroom on your own, walking. These are things that are just such simple tasks that, like, when they're stripped away, and that's just to do one of those tasks is the daily goal. It, it's so eye opening, and I mean, just now I can just appreciate that every day. Like being able to look in the mirror, to stand on my own, and those those simple tasks. Like I said, it's just you're so grateful for them. To be able to do those things and function on your own, let alone enjoy the bigger things in life, like my children, my wife, the rest of my family, and just being able to go outside, go on walks, like be vertical. That's
Hmm.
not stuck in a wheelchair. I mean, there's so much more to be grateful down to just living everyday life and waking up. and versus what I think things that used to be stressors of mine prior to the surgery.
Definitely, definitely. And what advice would you have for other people? I'm sure there are. It is a rare disease, but there are many people that are kind of walking around with very small what
The
was the
cavernomas.
very small
Yeah.
cavernomas, but they don't know, and it could hit them any
So
moment.
if you've had a scan and you've been told that you had a cavernoma, do a little more research. Definitely get second, third, fourth opinions if you need to. Um, and I would take it seriously, because I mean, I was very fortunate in my case that things worked out the way they did, and I've had the recovery that I've had. But there's a lot of cases out there where people are far worse off, or they have multiple cavernomas or non-operable cavernomas, and um, it's not something to be taken lightly. That's kind of just how in the beginning of my story it was, and that's just, I think, because of the lack of awareness and the true uh, knowledge about them. And so it is rare, and I would suggest, if you do have it, make sure you get it looked at and take it more seriously. If you're not, if you've gone through it, and you have symptoms, or you've gone through surgery, and it's just take it one day at a time, and focus on what you can control. And I think, the mindset of positivity has played a big part in my life. And it's not easy to do, and it's okay, but there's definitely sources out there, like the Angioma Alliance. There's other, people that are in your shoes as well. And reach out to me. Um, and if you need help or someone to talk to, it's available.
Hmm. No, that's really awesome. I'm glad you mentioned the organization as well, because that it was the same situation when my mom had to get surgery. That she didn't know where to start. Right? Where do you find the
Sure.
resources to learn about these things? If you reach
Yeah.
out, you want to know about what experiences other people have had. So it's good to have that community.
Yeah. Facebook, there's, the Angioma Alliance was good to get a lot of information on there. There's actually another subgroup called the STEMIs on there as well, where it's a lot of people that have had just um, surgery in their brainstem, similar situation. So you can connect with people on a lot of that level. That, because it's hard. I mean, when you have symptoms that are a lot internal, people can't really relate unless they've been through that situation. And so it's nice to know that there's a group or community or other people out there that are feeling what you're feeling, or experience what you've experienced. And so, yeah, they're definitely great resources. It's funny. Um, so the Angioma Alliance, I signed up with them, and they actually have a peer-to-peer group, which is uh, it's pretty cool. So you can get matched up with somebody else that has had maybe not necessarily a similar experience, but they're part of the group. And they may have had a cavernoma of some sort, or some type of angioma bleed, and um, it's a platform to be able to connect with somebody. And I got connected with my buddy Evan out in Chicago, and he's across the country. And it's kind of a unique story. I That job that I was waiting on, right when all this surgery went on, I ended up taking that job, and they laid me off a month later. And so on, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I was just, 4 months into my recovery, and on my LinkedIn, I had an email from Horizon Pharma, and they were just a pharmaceutical company. I went through the process. I ended up getting the job, but they send you back to Chicago for a 10-day training. And so in the meantime, I've been talking to Evan, my angioma partner, and I said, hey, like, I'm going out to Chicago I got hired by this job company, and it's based out of Chicago. Like, how far away are you? Like, maybe it would be possible to meet up. And he's like, you're not going to believe this. The corporate office where our training is held was literally 2 miles from his house. So at the training, we had to stay for 10 days. So we had a weekend. We got, a little bit of time for ourselves. So I was able to actually meet up with him and meet in person and be able to just share our stories and connect on a new level. And, he's just a friend, somebody else I can reach out to, in my darkest days or happy or whatever's going on, just another ear. And I would never have had that connection if it weren't for the Angioma Alliance. And so definitely
Hmm.
grateful to them, grateful for Evan. But it was just kind of, like I said, how everything happens for a reason.
Right,
That
right.
that definitely lined up. and I just knew I was at, and everything has happened the way it's supposed to for me.
That's awesome. It makes such a big difference if you know somebody that's been through a similar experience and you can just connect with them at that level, and especially with something like a rare disease when there's not a lot of people that know what you're going through, right? So I mean, you get
Hmm.
one person that you can connect with on a deep level that just hears you out. It
Sure.
makes a huge difference. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. It's even connecting them with my wife and my family. I mean, they see me, they know like when I'm having my good days, bad days, but at the same time, it's tough because they see you and you seem normal to them now, right? But you've got a lot going on inside that they can't always connect with. So it's nice to have somebody else that's always in that same kind of state of mind, and they're able to just share with them.
Right, right. And so all of this experience, how has it changed the way that you approach the work that you're doing right now?
Definitely. I mean, I think I'm in pharmaceutical sales, and I know what it's like to be on the other side and be in the patient's, be on the patient side of things. And just through my experience and like the patient care is so important. And um, it's definitely made me more of a quality rep in terms of putting the patient first and not thinking of, because obviously it's sales, and, a lot of salespeople are like, what's in it for me? But if you change you have that twist of like, it's not about me, it's about the patient, or it's about what am I doing for somebody. So it makes my work more rewarding knowing that I'm able to be out there helping people and impact people's lives in a positive.
Hmm. And I was checking out some of the videos because that's how I first learned about you. Is just I had happened to see a video on LinkedIn, the one that you made for Horizon, and so I went back on YouTube and I was checking out the rest of the channel. And what I found was, and actually was surprising, very very pleasantly surprising, is that they've made these series of short videos where people talk about why the work that they're doing at this company, it's personal to them, right? So they're connected to it on a personal level in one way or another, which is pretty unique. You know, it's not something that you really get from a lot of people because oftentimes it's about, like you said, it's about selling the product, what's in it for me. We're running a business here. But I think as soon as you tie into patient care, what it ultimately means for patients and for their lives, that changes the conversation, changes the approach altogether.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, I was fortunate to be able to be a part of that series, with Horizon and my current company. I think it's, you know, the personal side, the personal touch definitely makes the difference. And, they're a company that is diving into rare disease meds. Uh, they want to get into that space and help people, because they understand and know people deal with these diseases and these symptoms, and are suffering on a day-to-day basis, and if they can do their part to help, and that's what it's about.
Hmm. Hmm. Where do you see yourself going within the industry? Let's say, like, if you can think out a couple years into the future, where do you see yourself going?
I A couple years from now, I mean, I would love to get stay within the pharmaceutical side of things. I've thought about trying to get into medical device sales, where you kind of have more of a personal patient interaction. But I do know that pharma does offer that as well. And I've always wanted. I'm now, given my experience, I want to try to get into like the neurological side of things. And if there's neurological meds or any way that I can help on that side, just given my experience, I think it would be awesome to be in that role to help give back and be more relatable to more people.
Hmm. Absolutely, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's being able to. So, like, I started my career working with a lot of practitioners, a lot of physicians, but I was also working with patients, and to be able to bring that perspective into a role where you're helping to grow a company that's bringing new medicines to the market, or new therapies or new technologies to the market, it just like I said, it changes the conversation, it changes the motivation, the inspiration behind the work, and I think that goes a long way. So it's cool that you have that personal experience that you can bring to the table. Makes you certainly relatable to folks that are actually prescribing or using the technology. So I think that goes a long way, and I see a lot of awesome success in your future.
Yeah, well, hopefully, appreciate it.
Awesome. So Sean, that kind of brings us to a close today. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention to listeners out there? Anybody, could be a patient, could be somebody working in the industry.
Shoot, I just, I'm so grateful, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much. Anybody that can help spread the word about rare diseases, or the Angioma Alliance, or anybody that's suffering with any type of rare disease, or any day-to-day symptoms, reach out, get help, and just stay positive. Mindset is a big part of it, and I guess I also got to thank my wife and my kids and keep me motivated and on track. And so I couldn't be more grateful.
Also, good to hear, Sean. So I want to thank you again for being a guest on the show here today. It's been a pleasure having you here and talking to you about your experiences and getting personal on that. You've definitely been through a lot, and even though you're still feeling some of these symptoms, there's it's a gradual road to a full recovery. But in any case, I think there's a lot of awesome stuff happening in your future, and I see a lot of success again.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for coming on. To our viewers and listeners, we'll see you next time.